everybody. Today I'm so inspired to talk about brushes. I love brushes. I am a lifelong student of the brushes. I have practiced them and will continue to practice them for as long as I can practice. It's an endless study, like everything about our instrument is. And they are heart and soul of jazz music, one of the many things and tools we have to create great jazz on the drum set. And my preferred brush is this Vic Firth Heritage brush. Nice, very light gauged wire. Really the handle feels really great. So nice, light, sweeping sound. I like the lightness of it because I think it creates a very beautiful texture. And here it is. So that's an example of that. I also love these. These are Vic Firth split brush. They're a little bit longer than the Heritage brush. You can see that, and the wire, the gauge of the wire is definitely heavier. It sounds a little bit more harsh is not the right word, but it's definitely got a louder tone to it, different tone, more bright. And it's a split brush because there's a layer like the regular Heritage brush length of wire, and then there's this additional part on top, and they sound like this. So it's just your preference, whatever you like. These are my two favorite brushes on the market, and you can hopefully hear the difference right away. I just wanted to, these are what I'm going to talk about, and please, if you don't like this, obviously don't use it at all. These are just things that I like to practice and have come to my attention through studying brushes for as long as I have. One of my favorite brush players in the world is Jeff Hamilton. I learned a lot of this stuff from him, and in turn he learned from Philly Joe Jones, of course, who is also one of my favorite brush players, and the great Ed Thigpen. Anyway, I'm just, like I said, there's so many techniques you can study with brushes. There's so many strokes, there's just so many styles, there's so many patterns, there's so many ways to swirl, clockwise, counterclockwise, horizontal, vertical, any way you choose to move your brush. It's all just a beautiful dance, and whatever creates the music, the way you hear it in your head and your heart is all that matters. I don't believe there's anything wrong with anyone's technique, or maybe there's nothing right with anyone's technique. It's just whatever makes the music realize the way you like. That's all that matters. So anyway, here's a couple of things I practice. I've always practiced these, and I will continue to do so. There's just a basic tap stroke, and any stick technique you use, you can certainly apply to the brushes. So just moving your wrist just with a basic tap stroke. Wrist movement. You can also, for sure, use your fingers on this. Or you can use a push-pull technique. That definitely comes into play with brushes. Same wrist, fingers. Actually, when I studied with Mel Lewis in the mid-'80s, he told me that he uses his thumb versus fingers for finger control. So that might be like this. Just with thumb movement, which works great. And then also push-pull. So anything that you practice with the snare, you can definitely practice with the brushes. Another thing, sometimes instead of the straight up and down tap stroke, which is I definitely use, I definitely also use this sweeping motion side to side. Jeff Hamilton talks about this quite a bit, a lateral motion. I think about it as like skipping a rock across the water, when you get that perfect skip and the stone just glides. Same thing with left hand. With my right hand, I tend to sweep horizontally across the head from like 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, or wherever your brush might land on the head. And with my left hand, I sweep, usually ends up sweeping up and down, like in a vertical way. Maybe from like 10 o'clock to, 7 o'clock or something. I don't know. It's hard to describe. And anyway, let me since I was talking about triplets a lot in my previous mini lessons, I just want to show you how some of these strokes sound that I mentioned, and just using a triplet. So here we go. Okay, so here's just a regular tap stroke. Triplets. kind of the lateral or the sweeping or I call it the skip a rock stroke, and that goes like this. That's a fun one. That feels real good to play. Then I'm going to leave the brush totally on the head and just sweep side to side. Again, it's going to create an eighth note triplet, but my wrist is moving in quarter note triplet. So that sounds like this. And that's really cool. Now I'm going to move my wrist in eighth note triplets in one direction. So the backstroke of the sweep is going to give you a 16th note triplet. And that sounds like this. Here we go. Okay, and the same thing would be true with the left hand. The tap, regular. Wrist movement, kind of the sweeping of the head with the skip a rock. That's another way to do it. Brush on the head, left hand. That's kind of combination of wrist and fingers. And then in one direction, using eighth note triplets going in one way. That's mostly fingers, like this. So you can practice all the subdivisions with any of those strokes, and you're going to get a totally different sound. And like I mentioned before, practice sweeping towards you, away from you, left, right, clockwise, counterclockwise. Whatever feels good in your hands is the right thing for you. And like I said, there's nothing wrong about it. I actually, when I studied with Mel, this is a funny story. Well, let me put that off for a second. I was sweeping. Somebody had taught me prior to moving to New York to sweep counterclockwise. I was playing like this, pushing the brush away from me. And Mel, and I love him so much, he actually said to me, "What, are you stupid?" And he meant that with great love, of course, and taught me to swirl then. Counterclockwise, this direction, which I, of course, love. And then that was reinforced by Jeff Hamilton as well. Anyway, so let me show you a couple of double strokes. In one of my previous mini lessons, I talked about doubles and playing through all the basic subdivisions. So I'm going to do a couple of those just so you can get an idea. When the double strokes definitely, for me, work a lot better with that combination of throwing it and catching it, a little bit of fingers, wrist and fingers, but definitely sideways. Like that. And with this hand, it's a combination of that, maybe a little push-pull and some finger. But not straight up and down. For sure. It just feels more natural to let the brush and sweep across the head. So I'm going to put the metronome back on. It's about 120. So here's just some double strokes. Maybe I'll start with eighth notes. Okay, here we go. There's some double strokes, again, skip, a little bit of your fingers, but as I said, and I really want to reiterate this very strongly, listen to a lot of great brush players, and even better, watch them. There are fabulous videos out there. There's so many patterns, there's so many great strokes you can apply, and all the different kinds of ways of using the rim, and all, there's just it's sort of endless. Like I keep mentioning this because it's true. The study of this instrument is so fun and intense and can take you to all different places. But I've been really enjoying going down the brush rabbit hole on YouTube the last several days, and just wanted to share some things, especially if you're a beginning brush player. Hopefully this will give you some tips and ways to start. Practice rudiments with the brushes. Actually, any kind of great snare drum solo. I really like this Will Coxon solo called Rolling in Rhythm. That's a super fun one to practice with brushes. And just, again, try to use the brush as a brush, not just like, I'll play with brushes and try to make it sound like a drumstick by retracting the brush like this. Unless, of course, that's your sound and that's what you want to do. But, just embrace the sweep. And hopefully we'll make the world swing a little bit harder. So call me if you want to talk about brushes or triplets or the state of the world, and stay safe.